But first, Anthony Albanese crossed the dangerous line today. As of today, the Prime Minister's leadership is in question. For the first time, his own ministers are telling journalists he has no judgement. Labor-friendly journalists on the ABC today sounded shocked that they've been talking to Albanese's own colleagues in Cabinet who were calling him names for buying a $4.3 million beach house on New South Wales' Central Coast, complete with sweeping views of the ocean. They were wondering, had he gone crazy?
There's concern within the government that this is really shocking timing. I've had expressions like tone deaf put to me, selfish.
4 other Labor MPs, again anonymous, vented their anger in the Sydney Morning Herald. One said, "I can't think of a greater act of self-sabotage in my life. This is effing terrible." Another said it was not a good look. And yet another told Sharry Markson here on Sky, Labor members must be wondering if their captain had his head in the game. So Albanese must have had a sinking feeling this morning when journalists asked him about attacks on him by his own MPs this time, who were even likening his decision to buy this house to Scott Morrison going to Hawaii during the Black Summer bushfires 5 years ago, a mistake that ultimately finished Morrison as Prime Minister. How embarrassing was this?
How do you respond to senior Labor sources who have likened the decision to Scott Morrison's Hawaii trip?
What I'm focused on is delivering more houses for Australians. Yesterday I was in Queensland. We announced 1,100 new homes for Queenslanders.
So like I said, a line has now been crossed, both by Albanese and the Labor MPs he pretends to lead. As I said on Monday too, Albanese's authority was already destroyed when Australians a year ago rejected his racist voice. And since then, the government has drifted from cock-up to scandal to cock-up. Like I say, drifted. But until this week, until yesterday, his colleagues had stayed disciplined, as if expecting that Albanese would somehow bounce back with an agenda that might finally wow voters who've been smashed by inflation and falling living standards. Didn't happen, but only now has that discipline truly broken, with this widespread leaking by Labor politicians of their anger and frustration with Albanese. Not coincidentally, it came the day after Newspoll for the first time had Labor behind the coalition. So I suspect there's now a panic setting in Labor. Now, some Labor spokesmen have still tried to publicly defend Albanese's decision to buy that expensive beachfront house at Copacabana, of all places. I mean, of all the frivolous names. Energy Minister Chris Bowen, for instance, today was saying, oh, look, buying a house ahead of Albanese's marriage, that's just his private business. Get off his back.
I think the average Australian says, fair enough, leave him alone.
Except, of course, this is not just Albanese's private business. I mean, you just look at the papers, look on the TV shows, look at the intense public reaction and media coverage. All of it totally predictable, almost all of it negative. Now, sure, you know, Albanese's nice house has inflamed Australia's ugly, tall poppy jealousy, and that's really contemptible. But there's more to this anti-Albanese backlash than mere envy or a suspicion that Albanese is checking out of politics for more beach time. Just have a look at the timing and the context. This news is coming out at the very time that Albanese is going around the country trying to sell his latest plan to try to tackle the housing crisis. So that's why it's so embarrassing today. Albanese trying to switch the conversation from him buying a lovely $4.3 million home on the beach to the homes that other Australians are struggling to buy themselves. A switch so jarring that he tried this morning to keep his press conference short.
A number of Labor MPs have privately voiced concern about the decision to buy this house now. What do you say to them?
I'm focused on getting our help to buy legislation too. I'm focused on 3 things. One is making sure that more Australians can buy their own home. Second is helping renters through our build to rent scheme. And the third is our Housing Australia Future Fund and making sure that there's more public and social and community housing.
What shocking timing, just like his colleague said. This is why this is not a private matter. This is why Albanese is so infuriated his colleagues. I mean, just months before a very tough election, Albanese goes and buys an expensive house that is naturally going to make millions of voters compare their finances to his and make them feel like losers. But worse, many younger voters will work out that the reason they can't buy their first home, like Albanese did back when he was their age, is in part because of Albanese's own failures as Prime Minister.